it really depends on how long this is going to go. I would like to get the community, obviously community members, people who live in the community or in the area to comment. All right. And I will turn that off. That will go. That's going to go to in a second. I'll turn my until my
Hello, please leave a message after.
Mr. Meyer?
He went on mute to answer his phone.
Oh, dear.
Patrick Kalaki, who's obviously having trouble getting on. Go to the Community Board 2 calendar, all right? And that should be able to give you into the right place. Thank you. That's why I went off of it, right? So, welcome to everyone. As I said, our practice, there is a session, an area where people can comment on the agenda items. The 2 agenda items tonight are presentations, and our practice is to allow people who are, when we get to the presentation, to allow public comment. That's the meeting protocol. Obviously, we ask people to keep their questions and comments short and to the point. All right. John, will you call my co-chair is Esther Blount, who's also on, and the secretary is John Quint, who's also on. So John, if you call the roll, people can answer that they're here or not. And you're on mute, John.
They can't answer if they're not here.
I understand.
Board members go off mute, so we'll do this quickly. Sydney Meyer, Chair.
Present.
Esther Blount, Vice Chair.
Present.
John
Quinn, Secretary, present. Ernest Augustus, I haven't seen him.
Yeah, I haven't
Sandy Balboza, you're here. Julie Cullen Chung.
Here.
John Dew, I haven't seen him. Cheryl Gelbs. No. Kate Gilman is excused. Brian Howell, not yet. Patrick Kalaki, who obviously is coming on. I'll watch for him. Nicole Murray.
Here.
Jonathan Rogers.
Here.
Who was that? Who was the here? The second.
Jonathan Rogers.
Yeah, Jonathan Rogers, he's here. Cyril Scala.
Here.
Okay, board members, go on mute. Thank you. We have a quorum.
Here.
Who is that? Who is the extra here?
Don't worry about it, John.
It's
Okay.
only board members. who are-
Only board members we're looking for. We have a quorum.
Actually,
Thank
only
you.
committee meeting members. So the first thing on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Motion to adopt the agenda.
No, okay, Sandy and Juliet seconded. All in favor? Anyone opposed? It's carried. As to the minutes from the last meeting, has everybody had a chance to review the minutes? If you haven't had a chance to review the minutes, please review them. And if you have a comment, please pass it on to John and to me so we can make whatever change we think is appropriate. And thank you. Next item on the agenda is the district level crash statistics. I know that I said that we would not be doing that tonight, but given that fact, and if Nicole, if you're not ready, I'm
ready.
Okay, so good. Nicole, why don't you, we're doing this because some of the agenda items, which would have been longer, which I expected a much longer agenda, were delayed because of issues. So, Nicole, take it away.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so for new folks, what this is a spreadsheet that has counts and some graphical visualizations of district level crashes with injuries or fatalities within CB2. This data comes from New York City Open Data Portal. The record is motor vehicle collisions crashes. It is fed into a tool called Crash Mapper where it can be easily filtered. This data comes from the NYPD. Any crash that results in injury or fatality, the NYPD must file a report, or where there is damage of at least $1,000. Noting that some of these points may have some ambiguous or missing information, we do the best we can. And it is updated monthly before each meeting, before the meeting. So let me move my bar. Okay. So actually January was actually not so bad. Let me go to the 1-year chart. This is January here on the right. Very nice. Congratulations, CB2. I don't know what happened or what changed. Typically winter does have lower crashes than in the summer, but we only had 35 total crashes with injuries in the district. Last month we had 62. We had one, wait, I'll go to the monthly stuff. I don't think we really had any, yep, no fatalities, 8 cyclists injured, 9 pedestrians injured, and 32 motorists injured, which is pretty good, all things considered. I do want to do sort of like a year in review since we have the last year. This is like a graphical representation of the whole year of crashes. As we know, they concentrate around the major thoroughfares, Myrtle, off the bridge, Atlantic, and so on. And then here is get to the chart. Here's the chart. Oh, we already saw this chart. But yeah, you can see it's like pretty good. I don't know why, but we'll see how it goes. And if this trend, stays the way it is, then that's pretty good. But we'll see, again, winter does have pretty low crashes. And I'll open the map really quick so we could take a look. And again, this is just with any reported injuries or fatalities. So it's a very nice month, last month. So great job, CB2. We'll keep an eye on it and see if there's any uptick or if it just kind of goes back to normal.
Yeah, I just want to comment that last year the city has seen an increased number of pedestrian deaths. The city has been talking about it. Obviously, the 24-hour, 7-day-a-week traffic lights, speed cameras, and went into effect in August. The city has reported that on the streets where those are now in effect, that the number of enforcement has the number of tickets being issued has dropped when people have gotten the reminder in the mail. All right, those that follow the rules follow the rules. There also is the city is now talking about the fact that the number of people with unreadable license plates has gone up from a couple percentage points to where it's now approximately 7%, which is a significant rise in the number of people who are using plates that are either unreadable or untraceable for one reason or another. And the city is hopefully going to do something to work on that. Obviously, a combination of enforcement, education, street design. My own personal is I believe everybody should be entitled to a safe street. I believe that bicyclists, pedestrians, and vehicles should be physically separated as much as possible. All right, that the more we separate them, the safer it will be for all of them. And hopefully the city will continue to to do that. The city is talking about asking the state to lower the speed limit. I have a opinion on that, but I'm not gonna burden everyone with that tonight. So we'll see as time goes on what happens and what the city will do for and continued enforcement, continued education, and continued street design to make things safer for everybody.
And just again, for like sort of years in review, since we're at the end of the year, this is the 10-year overview. The chart, just the dates need to be updated, but it is from 2013 to 2022. This was COVID, and hopefully we keep things a little bit lower than things have been. So again, just something to keep an eye on. This darker red line at the top are the total injuries and fatalities just for Community Board 2. And in 10 years, it's been 9,323 injuries or fatalities. So not awesome. These are our friends, our family, our neighbors. So let's just keep this stuff in mind.
I wonder if in January there was a significant number of closures on the BQE, whether that helped.
Yeah, we mentioned this last month. It's really hard to isolate variables using just this tool. There's so many things that happen. The crash mapper is interesting because you can sort of like draw around areas and do comparisons between years. So we could always do that for a particular intersection or area in a time frame, but we would not be able to like isolate variables, closures, openings, cameras, but we can certainly target places that we need to.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for Nicole? Seeing no questions, we'll move on.
Oh, there's one in the chat.
So what's the question? If you have a question, put it in the chat. I'll read it out.
It just says, I have a question.
What's the question? Brooke, what's the question?
If she types it, I'll hear.
So
Brooke, if you type your question, I'll answer you in the chat.
it says sorry.
Okay.
I think it was just a mistake.
All right.
I was trying to unmute. Okay.
Go ahead and type it in the chat and I'll try to answer it there, Brooke.
Hi, am I unmuted now? Oh,
Yes.
I'm so
Yeah.
sorry. I kept trying to figure it out. My husband and I live on a stretch of Park Avenue where there have been a number of accidents and definitely over $5,000 in damage. And none of them are on the map from the past 6 years. And we have been trying to get a light put because the way that the street curves, people that are speeding, if they've been drinking or it's late at night, hit the cars and hit our house, which caused significant financial damage to us. So we'd really like to make sure that it's updated or a speed bump or something so that we can get something to fix it because, you know, we're really concerned about our safety.
And this is definitely Community Board 2. Can you give me an intersection?
Yeah. It's Park between Steuben and Grand.
Okay, I'll take a look.
Thank you.
And what I suggest is that obviously the rule are any accident over $1,000 is supposed to be reported. But like everything in the city of New York, the chances are that a lot of them don't get reported.
I mean, I've seen in the 3 years that we've been here, there have been at least 3 that I know of where cars have been hit, and none of them are reported. And for the people that live in our area, they say that this is a really common crash place. So it disturbs me that the map doesn't have anything about it because we really want to do something about it.
Unless they report it to the police.
Well, sorry, I would say one more thing. The data that I show in particular are crashes that have injuries. So or fatalities.
Didn't you say over $5,000 in damage too?
Yes, so that would be, so
Yeah.
if you go onto Crash Map, I'll send you all this information. If you go into Crash Mapper, you can like filter it out. If I did all crashes, you wouldn't be able to see anything because there's like thousands of crashes. The map would be covered with bubbles. So it might be there and it might just be that I'm not showing that one because maybe nobody was injured, but I will take a look at that map and I'll send you a little link and you can see everything that might be logged there.
Okay, because ours was definitely reported to the police and the driver was definitely injured.
Okay, yeah, I will take a look and I will follow up with you in the chat.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And just in general, if you want to get a speed bump or anything else, you're going to have to ask DOT for that. And there's on the DOT website, there's a place you can ask them to do a study to see whether or not it's called for or not. The next item on the agenda is the open session for public comment on the adopted agenda. As I said before, since the only two things on the adopted agenda are the two presentations, we'll hold the public comment on those agenda items until we get the presentations. And the next thing on the agenda is a presentation and Q&A, as I said. And Alicia is the person who's going to do it. So Alicia, why don't you share your screen and Amisha, and start the presentation.
Sounds good. And I'm lucky enough to actually have a team who has joined me. And so I will pass it over to start to Shaquana, please.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for being here today. And I hope you all have, if you have any questions, please access questions. I'm Shaquana Boykin. I'm a resident right by the BQE. I live in Walt Whitman housing. And of course, I'll also tell you that I am the female district leader for Simi District 57. And we are here today. We are the BQE cleanup team, and we are here today to tell you who we are, why we're here, and the outcomes that we would like. Sorry for the background. I live on the first floor, so all the young people are outside. So again, we are Brooklynites, and we live along Park Avenue, and we park, some people walk, I'm a biker, and we are concerned about what is happening under the BQE. So since 2020, we decided, since the agencies and the people who are supposed to clean up under the BQE haven't done it, we came together and we started to clean under the BQE. So if you do not know the location of where the BQE is, it's right by NYCHA high rises. So it's along Walt Whitman houses and Ingersoll houses. And on the other side, we have Commodore Barry Park. We call it City Park, and then the Eagle Building and a few other low-income buildings. And we are concerned because under the BQE is a dumping ground, which it should not be. And we want to make sure that our, as they build around us, that we are considered as well. So the outcomes we're looking for is that we believe a few small changes will benefit us, the residents, and the wider community with the city agencies, especially if we could just communicate together.
Thank you, Shaquana. So as you heard, we have been organizing for the past 3 years plus. A lot of us who are here have been involved much longer than that in advocating for our neighborhood. But one thing that we wanted to talk about is the issue with trash, which of course we can see that with our eyes, but because we have been needing to clean up, we have some quantified ways of really being able to describe the problem. So we would meet once a month and clean up about 6 blocks worth beneath the BQE, and on average get 100 bags of trash. And what we were observing during this time of being underneath the BQE, of interacting with other residents, of really getting to know one another, is that this isn't an issue of the residents neglecting the area, but this is an issue of not receiving support from the city. And so we would like to, one, advocate for a couple of things that would make a big impact in this issue. So I'm going to now pass it to Amanda. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm going to pass it to Keisha now. Okay, let's see. Oh, are you able
okay.
to?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Keisha.
Okay, I'm Keisha Morse, and I'm a resident directly next to the BQE on the Park Avenue side. I've lived in this area for over 70 years. And in the area under the BQE, there's signage that requires residents to comply with alternate side street parking in order for street cleaning regulations. On one side of the street, you have to move your car on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. On the other side, you have to move your car on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. For us living in this area, this requirement is very burdensome, especially since the space is not being cleaned. And to add to our frustration, alternate side parking rules are still being enforced. Yes, we are being asked to have our cars removed between the hours of 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. We, the residents who live in this area, must move our cars or double park or sit in our cars from 3 a.m. in the morning to 6 a.m. in the morning, and sometimes even sleep in your car in order to secure a spot on the next day. Something about this doesn't seem right. No parking from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. in a heavily populated residential area, an area that increases in population by the week. We are not a commercial area where there is no cars parked during these hours. It seems to us that city agencies should take into account how their rules are impacting the people they are charged with servicing. With that said, it is our request that the alternate side parking be changed to 1 day a week, like the rest of the community, and that the time be also changed to a time that is reasonable for people who live and work in this area. We need hours that show that we are being respected, the people that live in this community. And we are asking that the community bar do what it can in order to see that this is taken care of.
Thank you so much, Keisha. I'll pass it to Amanda now.
Hi, my name is Amanda Bonavita. I currently live on Vanderbilt Avenue between Park and Flushing, but I've lived on Vanderbilt within a block of Park Avenue for almost 15 years. So I've seen a lot of changes in the neighborhood in terms of the rising level of residents in the neighborhood and children in the neighborhood, and just the rapid change that is happening and all the new development. So to build on what Keisha was talking about, while we have these higher expectation of alternate side parking than the other blocks in the neighborhood on Park Avenue, we're not getting the cleaning that usually happens during those alternate side times. And both residents and sanitation acknowledge that it's because the street sweepers cannot get into the space, the standard size street sweepers, because of the end cap enclosures and the bike lane pylons. So what we would like to see happen is alternate equipment be used that is available so that the street sweeper can come through and do this work, which you can see from the images is desperately needed on a regular basis.
And so along with that, as you've heard us describe, this is where we all live. And this area is filled with people who have called it a home for a really long time, but we do not have the trash receptacles that you would expect in a residential neighborhood. And we have been advocating for that for years and years, and it has not been really met with the kind of response that we would like. So one thing we have been able to observe over the years of cleaning up the area is that we see two kinds of trash. One of them is really just food from like people having lunch and then having no place to put the trash after they have lunch. That could really easily be resolved by having trash receptacles where trash could go. The other major trash we see is actually illegal dumping by construction companies. And so we would love to advocate for discretionary funds, which would allow us to buy some trash receptacles for the area, which could be emptied regularly by agencies. And I will pass it back to Shaquana.
Okay, sorry, I couldn't unmute myself. I'm sure you seen or heard what's going on, but the surface conditions of under the BQE where people park is a problem. With the expanding housing density, housing is going up all around the BQE. And we already have extensive high rises around the BQE. We have potholes that take up some spots. So it may be available parking, but you may not be able to park because of all of the potholes. And it's creating an area where waste just collects there as well. So our request is we are advocating with DOT to repave the roads and to smooth the road surfaces and restripe the spots that exist. And someone will go into details later, but they can do it because they did it at one part of the BQE. Next.
Which would be this block. I believe it's between Hall and Washington, where the area has been leased to Lyft to use for city bike, but there was no public comment, no communication with the neighborhood about this possible use. And there wasn't actually communication once the lease was put in place and the area was closed off, repaved, resurfaced, lines put in, cleaned, while the rest of this area under Park was just left without change. So we would just like to even be made aware at the very least of when these changes are being made, and above that, be asked for input on how this might affect the community. If we have any input on alternate areas, there are other areas under the BQE that wouldn't have been as impactful. And also that we lost this area that we have been taking care of to a private entity without input. We're not seeing any of the profit being gained from this leasing, and really just feeling like all the work we're putting in is just not really regarded or respected. So what we would request would just be better communication, more input when possible, and also updates on the status of this space. How long is the lease? Will there be other areas like this that will be used for private entities? Just more communication in general.
So to wrap up, I will pass to Shaquana.
I'm sorry, I keep muting myself. So to end this, what is really evident is the communication. There hasn't been communication between us and the community. When I say us, the people who are supposed to maintain under the BQE, so sanitation and Department of Transportation, being able to actually make sure that we can involve community residents in all decision-making related to our neighborhood, and using discretionary funding to provide trash receptacles throughout Park Avenue. So we can somehow reduced the trash, because if you get out your car and you don't have anywhere to put it, most likely you're going to put it on the ground. And a consistent street cleaning and trash can emptying by the Department of Sanitation. So not telling us as neighbors to move our cars and you're not being able to clean under is like a smack in our face. So please be able to communicate that, and to reconsider alternative side parking so that it reflects the needs of our residential community. 3 to 6 a.m. all week, 7 days a week is ridiculous. There needs to be something that's going to help clean under the BQE and also be considerate of community residents. And also very, very important to improve our surface. As you can see, if you haven't seen, where they're leasing out under the BQE is beautiful. And they have lines, they know where to park. The potholes are filled. So if we could at least invest in the other areas too, that would be great. So the next steps, I hope that you all could join us or tell other neighbors to join us.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. What I will do is on the bottom, there's something called reactions. If you have a question, go in the reaction section and raise your hand like I just did. All right. So I can call on people who have questions. I will also ask Taya, all right, that to see if she can arrange a meeting with DOT and sanitation, and maybe with Crystal Hudson's office to raise these issues directly with those departments, which might be helpful. And I agree with you that better communications from all these departments and more would be really helpful to you and helpful to us. Because you're right, it looks terrible, and there's no reason why it shouldn't look better. So the first person I'm going to call is I'm going to call on committee members first. Ernie, I'm going to lower my hands to show you how it's done, and then I will get to the community people. Go ahead, Ernie.
Okay. Now I'm somewhat surprised by the hours of the alternate side. It is an undue burden and an insult to the community. I have alternate side at a reasonable time. My block is from 11:30 to 1, but never heard of 3 a.m. From 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. It's a slap in the face. It is an undue hardship. I don't know how long this has been going on. I just have a question about the lighting underneath the BQE. Is there sufficient lighting there?
So we have, we don't have like lighting, but at a few, I guess at a few of the end of the parking, there's like a big, huge white, like NYPD light, but it's not in every under every parking spot.
So what they have is police lighting as required, but it's not under it. There's no street lamps under the BQE. Is that what you're saying?
There's a street lamps on the corners.
Yeah, but it's not under the BQE.
No.
Okay.
There's lighting in some sections.
Okay, Patrick.
Couple questions. So this just reminds me of like when we do our community budget offers or proposals, where we suggest putting in lights, and the response often from the city is we don't have the budget for the maintenance, but it doesn't really make sense. Like none of this makes sense. You know, like you live there. I mean, maybe the roadway corridor is like an industrial zone or something, and they feel like they can treat it that way. But anyway, I would certainly agree to anything you want us to write. I hope you're in touch also with the city council member, because I think this is just an utter softball. I hope it's a softball for them to simply, do what they're supposed to do. Like everyone's deserves a a trash can in their neighborhood. I also wanted to, this is my last comment, I wanted to let you know, as I'm sure you're well aware, that the BQE visioning process is ongoing. And, BQE North is one of the areas, and the plans are to make sections like this better. So hope to see you there, and I will certainly speak to this as it's really already been raised, to be honest, the neglect of those areas. So thank you so much.
Okay, then we're going to go to the public comment, people. I remind you that although Esther first, excuse me. Go ahead, Esther. Esther, go ahead.
Hi, I thank you for coming and pointing out these issues. I think it's so important. And the most important thing I take away from this is that, there's always talk about no parking under the BQE, all these cars, but private companies can get the land. They always say we park on the street for free and this and that, but they selling our streets for money. And I just want everybody to take note of that. And I thank you very much for all your efforts.
Thank you, Esther. Next, Eric Parker, unmute yourself and try to keep it down to a couple of minutes, please. Eric?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Yeah, I noticed that the description of this meeting ended the BQE at Grand Street, but it continues to Steuben. Is that not part of the neighborhood?
I'm not exactly sure where the CB2 ends on that side. It doesn't go down that far, too far.
It ends at Steuben Street, which is a complete disaster.
Hold on for a second, Eric. Get to Taya, what do you say?
The district ends at Class, and we just used Grand as a shorthand because that's where the triangular, that's a big site for dumping at that triangle where you might know it as the site with the mural.
Okay, Eric, you have any other question? I'm going to call on Tanja. Tanja, go ahead. Unmute yourself. Go ahead. And I apologize if I pronounced your name wrong.
Tanya Richardson. Hi, how are you? So one of the concerns I wanted to speak about the garbage is that also becomes an issue for rats that we have. And the garbage feeds the rats. You won't have it that much of a problem if it gets cleaned to a certain capacity. I mean, the rats aren't going anywhere, but they start breathing more under the garbage. The cars that's parked there, they tear, they go in people's cars, eat up their tires and so forth. And I wanted to state also too about the lighting. There do need to be some lighting in between where it's not on the corners and crossways for safety issues, and as well as cameras somewhere around that area. I'm a resident of 9 Farragut houses and also a past board member. So those things are just imperative. And together, I hope that we can get this done as a community. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanja. Sushan?
It's Tanya.
Tanya. Thank you, Tanya. Sushan?
Hi, can you hear me? It's Suchin, but I specifically wanted to comment about that section of the BQE that has been provided to Lyft. I'm on Waverly Avenue, right between Park and Myrtle. I butt up right against that area. It's a 2-block section. It goes from Clinton up to Washington. As District Leader Shaquana mentioned, it was a stunning surprise to just show up one day and see it all fenced off. There had been no signage or announcement beforehand, at least that I had seen, and I'm literally at the end of the block, so I imagine I would have seen it. We do park our family car there all the time. And there's a couple of elements of it that I think are truly concerning because they're kind of endemic of the broader issues that Shaquana and the team was bringing up. But number one, it seems like a publicly accessible lot, a part of the public commons, was just kind of taken away and given to a private interest. And it's unclear if Lyft was ever asked to go just rent some space somewhere. There's a bunch of empty warehouses and empty real estate down there. There's the Brooklyn Navy Yard that's down there. I'm really unclear why Lyft couldn't have used any of those spaces instead of the free public lot that so many people depend on. Now everybody in the neighborhood has higher parking tickets. We have to pay higher garage fees. We spend valuable time looking for parking instead of at our dinner table, which is obviously a huge psychological hit to us. And since it's been barricaded, I have to say, I haven't seen it being used heavily. And that's another question I have is, what use are they putting it to? There is not a steady stream of vehicles going in and out. I do not see bikes deposited there on the regular or being repaired or anything like that. So it's very confusing. If they're not using it fully, I'm not sure why we can't share it with them at the very least. And this kind of relates back to the lack of transparency. This is another major issue. There is literally no transparency into that area because they have erected these really cheap, flimsy fence barricades, covered them with dirty tarps. And there's a safety concern here. The first time we get a major storm, those unanchored fences are going to become airborne. The bare minimum, they're going to cause property damage, potentially much, much worse. And the thing that kind of bugs me on top of everything else, and then I'm curious if this was considered, is that, it's an ugly eyesore now. We used to have a clear view down to the Manhattan skyline. That was really pretty. But it also impacts the value of the neighborhood and the homeowners in the neighborhood. And this is as you all know, I don't have to tell anybody this is a historically Black neighborhood. It has a much higher percentage of BIPOC home ownership than many other neighborhoods. So it feels like doing this without a chance for public comment was an extraction of wealth from a community of color and handing it to an out-of-state multi-billion-dollar corporation. Now, I say all this as a bike rider. I use the city bike system. I love the idea of a shared city bike system. But the other thing is, what are the improvements we're going to get is the other question I have, right? I haven't seen an improvement in the quality or the number of the bikes at the existing racks. I haven't seen an expansion of the existing racks. I don't find a bike easier than I used to before. There's no more electric bikes than there are. The system in general seems about 2 generations behind similar systems in Europe, which have less impact on neighborhoods, are broader, better supported, and more electrified. Even if we got all those services, this is kind of my last comment, even if we got all those services, removing free public parking for privately rented bikes is not a fair exchange. It's not a one-to-one exchange. In fact, it is explicitly reducing accessibility for disabled folks, for folks with movement impairments, that can't use a bike, or for folks with long commutes, that it's impractical to be on a bike. And, I also appreciate the notion that our senior citizens, our neighbors who are
I've
seniors.
allowed this to go on for fairly long. You want to finish up, please?
Sure, absolutely, absolutely. So all I'd really like to know is can we get answers to what this process was? And is there any way, ultimately, if we can talk to the counselor, whoever, to pull back some of this and find out whether Lyft has actually had to do the same steps we would have to do to acquire such a space, which I don't need to point out, none of us can actually acquire. It's supposed to be public.
So what I'm going to ask Taya to work with you on this. You raised some really, I think, important concerns about the that have to do with both public safety and openness and clarity. And so to the extent that hopefully those will all show up in the minutes, and Taya will work with DOT and see if we can get some answers in general for you later on. So Matt,
thank you.
And she's putting her thumb up saying agreeing. So Matt Townsend.
Hey, Yeah, I live probably, Suchan, across the BQE from you in the chocolate factory. And I've been out for a couple of the cleanups, which has been great to see people being involved in the community. And it's always been it's a concern for everyone out there. But a couple questions. Was there, and maybe the answer is no, has anything been presented to perhaps move the lift lot down to the east end of the under Park Avenue, where what used to be called the soundscape was painted? It used to be a beautiful mural down there, and now it's covered by graffiti. But that seems to be an area that is a dumping ground for cars, for stacks of used tires. And Eric, it sounds like we would be dumping our problems down on your part of Park Avenue, but I think having the lot down there would actually make an improvement given the trash that gets left there all the time. I realize the space isn't as big as the 2-block lot between Washington and Clinton. And I'll agree with you again, Suchan, it's not even fully used. So I don't understand why they need such a big space. And to all the people who have mentioned the resurfacing, oh yes, from your mouths to God's ears.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Thank you. We have 2 more people who are going to speak on this, and that'll be the end of it. I'm not going to GIULIO, Wheelo. Okay, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Julio.
Julio. Okay, Julio.
Hello.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Ahead,
hello.
Yes, go ahead. We can hear you.
Yeah, sorry. I'm having some Wi-Fi trouble. I don't live on Park Avenue. I live a few blocks away from it, but I regularly go through that area, and I'm just wondering if the DOT has any plans to basically completely reconstruct the street, since from what I've seen of it and from what all of the residents who live on it are describing, it seems like it's not a problem that can be fixed with just 1 or 2 repavings, that the whole street would be better served by a complete capital project.
Okay, thank you. Eric? Eric, unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Eric. Go ahead.
All right, so I'm wondering, is this a place where things get done? Can you guys help us? I don't really know. I've never been to one of these before, but if you look at underneath the BQE in Williamsburg and Greenpoint, it's completely different than our underneath the Green BQE. Theirs is clean. It's all paved. It's lit. I don't know if you've noticed that. If you just travel up the BQE, I think to the next neighborhood. Do you know how they got that done? That's
No.
my question.
But we will try to do what we can.
But you've noticed a difference, right?
It's if you go under the section that's in CB 6, which is under the BQE and CB6, it looks about the same.
Like at Metropolitan.
No, that's the other direction.
Right. That's the one I'm talking about.
It's a CB. You're talking about CB1. Yeah, I'm talking about the other section that's in CB6, the area that goes south towards the Verrazanos, on the other side of when you get on the other side of the Gowanus. But the answer is we will do what we can, and we'll get reports back. This will now go on the agenda, and sometimes it'll go on asking for the city council. We'll put in requests for capital funds and stuff like that. Now that it's on, our.
But do you know how a private company like Lyft was able to obtain a lease? You guys had no idea about it?
They went to DOT and said, we want this space, and DOT said, yeah, this is how much, pay us and we'll give it to you.
And that was that, right?
That was what they did, right? They didn't come to us and ask us for a lease.
Right.
I did say that Eric was the last one, but I have one more, so I'll allow the one more person to go. Karen Richardson? And
Yes,
that
thank
is
you.
the last person.
Yeah, and I
Thank
was
you.
trying to raise my hand, but I can't find out where it went, but I'm raising my hand.
So, do I have the floor?
Go ahead, Karen, you do. We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, so, I live on Downing between Gates and, Putnam. And across the street is PS 56, a school. They recently renovated the entire schoolyard and they are using part of that to park their cars, the principal and I guess other members of the school. And in that space used to be the trash containers. And so now 4 large trash containers are on the street. This seems to be a permanent place that they have left them. They're exposed to people throwing their trash on top of them.
Karen, I'm going to stop you because that's not the same thing. I'm going to ask you to get in contact with Taya, who's our district, who's at the district office, and raise the issue directly with her. And we will help you get that. We'll at least get an answer for you. But this is just on this specific issue. So Karen, I'm asking you, and Taya will put in the chat meeting stuff, the information to contact her so you can go over it with her, and I'm sure she'll follow up with you.
Okay, thank you.
Nicole, you want to go next, please?
Oh yeah, I just wanted to reiterate about the BQE visioning session. So, the city has made a commitment to updating the BQE in light of all the things wrong with it and just changes that need to be made. So if you click on that link in the chat and then you also go to events, you will see some upcoming community visioning sessions, the community workshops. It is divided into central and south and north. I'm not sure which we are. Are we
This is
central?
north. That's north.
North? Yeah.
Yes, central is only really the area between Atlantic and Sand.
Okay, so there's some north workshops coming up in March. Looks like March 23rd, 27th, and 3rd. Yep, 23rd and 27th, and there may be more. I'm sure this will be a multi-year thing. So definitely encourage everybody to come to these and make their ideas known.
Yes, and I was going to talk about that a little bit in my chair's report too. Brian, I'm going to tell you to hold it till later if you don't mind. All right. The next thing on the agenda is the presentation and Q&A on the co-naming of North Portland between Myrtle and Park. Trayana Carter Jones, who's the daughter of Edward Carter. Edward Carter was a longtime member of Community Board 2, and I'm happy to call on you.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name is Tyriana Carter. Good evening to the board members, the non-board members. I'm not much of a talker. I'm not going to keep you guys hostage like my dad used to do back in the days, because I know he kept the meeting hostage. I'm just here to just let you guys know that I think this was a long time coming, right? My dad was an amazing guy, not only to me, but to the community. My dad always presented to me, it mattered the day you was born, the dash in between, and your death date. And that dash in between for him was amazing. He started his Fort Greene Youth Patrol back in 1970. And when he started that youth patrol, he took in so many inner city kids and housed them with summer youth jobs so they could stay out of trouble. He was a part of the Brooklyn Navy Yard. He developed that. The Brooklyn Navy Yard was falling completely apart. My dad went over there, he had a vision, and what he created is the amazing thing you can see today. The Brooklyn Navy Yard is thriving. He was one of the founding members of the Brooklyn Navy Yard, and as you can see, his vision came to life. He also was a board member of Cumberland Hospital. Cumberland Hospital when they was getting ready to develop Woodhall, they were actually going to close Cumberland Hospital down. My dad fought for them to keep the hospital open so that we can have some healthcare down here in this area. But my dad not only did those amazing things, he also gave inner city kids the vision of hope, right? Which I don't see a lot of today. He used to, in June, when it was time for graduations, go to 67, 287, 46 Sands and give kids awards. The kids that he awarded for that summer was the kids that were the trouble kids, not the kids that had everything and was given all the great grades. He gave the kids that were the ones that were left behind, because he always wanted no kids to be left behind. My dad was also one that started the Tenant Patrol Association to make sure the residents of Fort Greene was safe. I kind of had a rough week this week, and the reason why, because I see my dad vision coming true. I have been looking for a 2-bedroom apartment down here in the Fort Greene area, and when I tell y'all every 2-bedroom is $6,000 and better, he told me this when I was yet a teen, like 15, like this vision was coming, and now I see it come to life. But this right here speaks for itself. You see his profile up here. He established daycare centers. We didn't have a daycare. He established the Waverly Daycare Center, the Duffield Daycare Center, 966. He also was a black cowboy, where in the summers he brought horses down to the projects that inner city kids had never experienced in his life, to let them ride the horses. He took them up to Lake Welch to see there's more to the world than just in the projects. He created so much security down here in Fort Greene that they called him the legendary mayor of Fort Greene. My dad also, he inspired Letish James. I remember Letish was just a lawyer, and I was a foster care parent at 23, and he had Tish go into the courts with me to support me on starting an inner circle vision for young foster care parents to make sure our kids were safe. Tish was, and look where she's at today. I sat in plenty of meetings with Eric Adams at Brown's Memorial, where him and my dad with the 101 black police officers. I remember before Hakeem Jeffries ran for first office, before he ever ran for office, he sat down in our house back up on Madison and sat with my dad and asked my dad, could he support him? And my dad said to him, what are you going to do for us, young man? If we support you down here in the Fort Greene Bed-Stuy area, what are you going to give us back? And he did amazing things. Before the guardian angel was ever brought about, my dad used to walk the young women that worked in Tudor Toys right here on Johnson Street to DeKalb Avenue from the Tudor Toy Factory to make sure they were safe. My dad have an amazing history. Like I said, I wasn't going to keep you guys all night. If I could present everything that he presented to the world down here in our area, you guys we would be here all night. But the most thing I could say about him, I think this was a long time coming. I honestly wanted Myrtle Avenue between Carlton and Prince, because I felt like he kind of secured that area. He secured Fort Greene Farragut. He created the City Park pool for us. He brought amazing things to us down here, and he kept us safe. He was never recognized to me, and that's why I'm trying to get him recognition. He sat on community board too for some 20, 30 years, and I felt like when he left the board, they never even awarded him with anything, right? When he left the Brooklyn Navy Yard, he was never even given no recognition, but my dad never wanted or searched for recognition. This was a part of his DNA. This was about him and what was in his heart. But what I can say is what he brought to this community needs to be recognized, and the kids for the future need to see that it was overwhelming. It was amazing man here that kept us safe. I'm not much of a talker, but all I could say is that I know my dad had a part in Cumberland Hospital. He had a part in the Brooklyn Navy Yard. He created daycares for us. He created the Tenant Association for Fort Greene when the hallways wasn't safe. He did abundance of things. So his resume speaks for itself. And I ask you guys to please vote for his street naming, because he wasn't recognized when he left those entities, and I felt he deserved more. Even when he was on his dying bed, my dad was old and sick, people were still coming to him. Mr. Carter, we're getting put out. I need your help. And I just had to tell him, listen, this is his time to rest and shine. So I'm coming to you to present to you guys his legacy. I had so much in my mind to say yesterday, and I knew it was gonna go a different way, but I hope I presented you guys to him and his vision. And the last thing I wanna say is that he brought all of this to life down here in the Fort Greene area, because when he started his little storefront at the Fort Greene Youth Patrol in 1970, he sat down with Martin Luther King and split a sandwich with him. And Martin Luther King told him, Ed, what I need you to do is bring to your community a lifeline of hope and prosperity. And that's what my dad did by providing coats for kids that didn't have coats. He was a free lunch program before it was free lunch in school. He made sure kids kept summer youth job. He could only fit 25 kids in that little office, but he took 350. He took Al Sharpton and told Al Sharpton to go explore the world with James Brown. When Al came back with his hair slick, he said, I didn't tell you to come look like him. I told you. So, he did a lot of amazing things. And I hope I gave you guys a little insight to what my world was like, because he kept you guys hostage, like he had never had anything to do, but he had a lot. He had a family and he had a wife, but we had to split that love with him, with a community. So I'm asking the community to please just give him something back. Just name a street after him. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to support the co-naming?
I'll make a motion to support it.
Okay, that was Esther who wants to second it.
I'll second it.
Okay, is there any discussion on the motion?
Yeah, I just like to say to Tanya Carter that I knew her father. I knew Ed, served with him on the community board. What you said is very true. He was steeped in the history of this community. He was steeped in Black history. He was steeped in the history of the Brooklyn Navy Yard and its burial ground. And he was steeped in the history of the Fort Greene Park monument. He educated people to that. He even educated me at one point, and I'm thankful for that. And I'm just thankful that, we don't really recognize communities. We don't recognize community leaders if they're not on the national stage. But I can speak to the fact that, like other community people who stayed, who was born and stayed, and I would hear people talking about how bad New York City was and how many people are leaving, and you take polls and this exodus. But the people who stayed, they helped stabilize this community. I remember when, nobody wouldn't want to live in Fort Greene. They wouldn't like the word Fort Greene roll off their lips. But there were people who stayed at night in the churches, who found themselves both vested and invested, and they made Fort Greene safe. I remember feeling like you at one point with my own father, but I grew up in the brownstone in Bed-Stuy, and it used to concern me. The only thing beautiful houses, but the only thing Bed-Stuy had was just bad press, negative bad press. And my father said to me, he can't do anything about that. What he can do is to maintain his house and provide for his family And that's what he did. And so I recognize that. And I would be honored that Ed Carter is recognized and a street be codenamed by this board. So I support that motion.
Okay, Ryan?
Thank you. I just have a question for Ms. Carter. Thank you for coming and speaking with us. I know you said that you originally were trying to get a block of myrtle co-named, and just curiosity, I was wondering if you could tell us about the the importance and the symbolism of the current location to your father's memory.
Well, Myrtle between Carlton and Prince was the area where my dad poured his heart out into. That's the major part of Fort Greene. I thought it was, and he would probably get upset at me for thinking so little. I thought that because Myrtle was such a long strip that we couldn't do it. So I was trying to settle for anything just to give him a piece of recognition. Myrtle, he kept Whitman safe. He kept Ingersoll safe. He created daycares within there. He created summer jobs within there. And he didn't separate Ingersoll from Whitman. He kept them all together. So the streets that I was talking about is between the Fort Greene area. And he even reached out. He even reached out over to Farragut. So he kept us as a unit. And that's why, and his office was right here on Myrtle between on Fleet Place. It actually was 187 Myrtle Avenue. That's where my heart was at, but I didn't know if you guys if Myrtle Avenue was too big. So I went to North Portland because he served on the board with Cumberland for like 28 years. So
In the chat box, Taya put out, Myrtle and Carlton was co-named in 2019 for author Richard Wright, and it's unavailable for overlapping or co-naming for 10 years. And I think Reginald Tyson, you want to raise your hand? You have a comment or a question, although this is normally just for board members. I'll let you say something.
that's my brother.
Well, I said it. Renee, I said he could say something. Please go ahead, Reginald.
Yes, thank you all for receiving my comment. The reason why Myrtle Avenue was important to us.
Reginald, you froze. If you turn your camera off, we should be able to hear you. Unfortunately, he froze.
Mr. Tyson?
You could try it again now. Try it again. Turn your camera, Reginald, turn your camera off.
One second, Mr. Meyer.
Oh, can you hear me now?
We can.
Go ahead.
Okay. The reason why it was pivotal when you say Myrtle Avenue, at least us not family, and I want to thank my sister for as eloquently as she could put it. Myrtle Avenue was the nexus of everything that was around. Mind you, it would do, at least to us, a disservice to have anything else any smaller or in another location. That very avenue surrounded, and this is one of the many things that that wasn't mentioned. Dad was instrumental in keeping the Nevin Street train station still open. It sat right in the middle of all that he was part of. Everything around it was around that, his office, the very street he went down where everybody, hey, Mr. Carter, how's it going on? And Dad was able to know everybody and their family and everything through that street. Everything around it, it just was right to do so if it could be. Like I said, on a grander scale than just a small, tiny street or strip. At least as much as Myrtle Avenue, because it was the very center of all that he was involved in. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor, and where it does reaction, all in favor, please raise. And remember, this is only committee members. Committee members only. All in favor, raise your hand. I see Sandy's has her hand raised. I will raise my hand later. I reserve the right to vote last. Okay. And please note that Sandy voted yes. All right. All
Yes,
the,
sir, did you want to vote yes? You probably, there you go.
I can't see
voted
you.
yes.
I made the
yes.
motion, so I want my hand.
Okay, Cheryl, you voting yes or
Yes, I'm voting yes.
okay.
Do you have my Cyril? My hand is up. Yeah.
Yeah, the people's hands are up, I see. All right. I'm gonna raise my hand yes as well. Sandy is raising her hand yes, although she can't figure out how to put the hand up.
Okay, we've got it. Everyone can put their hands down, please.
Put your hands down, please.
What's the count to you?
I'm gonna catch it on record. Don't worry.
It's 10, 11, 10, 11, 12, I believe. 11. Any abstentions? Anybody voting no? If you're voting no, raise your hand on the reactions. Any abstentions? It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, fam. Thank you, guys.
It goes to the executive committee next, and then it will go to the full board.
We want to thank you for hearing us. Thank you so much.
You're quite welcome. Thank you.
God bless. Stay safe.
And the next thing is the chairperson's report. I have a few things. First thing I was going to talk about is the MTA. You know, the MTA sent out, I said this at the regular meeting, I'll say it here too, that the MTA sent out a notice about the Omni card, that you can now do your senior citizen discount through Omni. Well, don't believe it, all right? It's very difficult and it's been very problematic. Also, in speaking to the MTA today, they now tell me, which they did not tell everybody else, that when they finally start the Omni card, if you have not signed up to move your senior citizen card to your credit card or to Omni, they will mail out to you a Omni card to use. All right. So those of you who haven't done anything about this, don't. Okay. Until you absolutely have to. They will send you a Omni card instead of the senior citizens card to use, which hopefully will be easier, not screwed up as I've been on the phone dealing with Omni for the last few days. There's been a lot in the news about the BQE, the triple cantilever. Our assembly and state senate and city council people have written to the city about the fact that there's a concern that the city may have already made up its mind. I am told that that's not true, but I don't necessarily believe that either, unfortunately. I asked you that we obviously that's something we're concerned about. What they're reporting is that the city has come to the conclusion it's going to be a total of 2 lanes in each direction with some change in how the park will go. But the city is also reporting that there's something about DOT giving them a hard time, and the city wants to get in the application for money sooner than later. How that will affect the north and south areas, which also want changes, where I don't believe they've come to very much conclusions, I have no idea at this point. I do know that the city has appointed a new person who exactly, I'm unclear exactly what the title is, but it's someone to coordinate, you know, open space, restaurants, open restaurant, open streets, closed streets. over the DOT and parks and everyone else, called and against they called a public realm czar, all right, to hopefully coordinate between things like parks and DOT better than it's being done now, and how it will work, and how and what her exactly. The first thing that they've charged her to do is with the Open Streets, Open Restaurant program. Hopefully that they will get moving on that so that it happens before the summer. Unfortunately, the city seems to move in a snail's pace, and it's a problem for us all. All of us have issues with what they're doing, and we would like to get it resolved. And Taya put in the so my biggest concerns as your chair are the BQE again, and how that's going to work. If anybody has any questions they'd like to ask me, I'm more than happy to try to answer them. Which brings us to the open session. Anyone have anybody want to be heard for the open session? Nathaniel Frank.
Hi, is this for requests for the future agenda items?
Yes, you can make such a request.
Okay, so I want to keep this brief. There's a number of us living on or off Gates Avenue in the district who have heard that the MTA is trying to reroute the bus, the B52 bus, from Green to Gates for a number of reasons. And I'm wondering if the committee is aware of that and if they plan to address it. I could summarize why a number of us, I'm speaking
No,
for
what I'm
about
going
a
to do is
dozen
say
and
something
counting.
very simply.
Yeah,
there
sure.
is a public visioning session going on the MTA on redoing the whole bus routes for Brooklyn. Actually, it's for every borough. They're doing it separately. You should you should make sure that they did RCB already, all right, but they will be coming back. I urge you to go over to the MTA site on the reworking of the bus route. Keep yourself informed of what's going on. It will have there and it's now in the chat. It's the MTA project on the network redesign. I urge you to go there. I urge you to put your comments up in there to them. That's what they're doing now. They're hearing it. You know.
Just if I could clarify, if I could seek clarification, we have done all of that and reached out to our elected officials, and we're wondering whether this committee and CB2 itself normally does or could get involved in terms of assessing the situation. And since you have a pipeline to the MTA that ordinary residents may not, potentially taking a position and helping us advocate for against the change that many of us don't want.
We're happy to do what we can when they do the next one. When they come up with the next redesign, it's supposed to be another charrette with that comes. She's putting up when the next charrette will be. We did that in January, but in my discussion with the MTA today, they do plan to come back again at least one more time.
Okay, our concern is that it might be too late if they already.
No, it's still
keep it in the draft.
It's still only the draft. It's still only the draft. Okay, I checked. I had a discussion with the MTA today. That's supposed to be only a draft, and they expect that after the draft there will be additional changes. But I urge you to get involved and get directly. The MTA is a state agency. They don't listen to us that much.
Okay, so this committee would not take up the issue normally, is what you're saying?
We might, all right, but because it represents we might. I mean, I just don't know yet. I'm just telling you that's where you're going to have to do it first, all right? Because I mean, we might. I mean, I live on the B65 route that they're going to close. So and take away some of the spaces. So they've already heard from me. All right. What they will do with it, whether they will listen to me at all, will listen to anything that we do, I don't know yet. I'm urging you to contact them directly, to continue doing so, to monitor it through that. All right. When they come up with the draft plan, the interim draft, as opposed, they will let you know, and then there will of course be a final draft, but there's supposed to be an interim draft followed by a final draft, and you should have 2 shots, and you should be able to. I wish I don't know specifically what you're requesting, but I would keep track and see what they're doing as they make the modifications.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Can I get a motion? Is there anything, being nothing else on the agenda, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Make a
Someone
motion.
make a motion to adjourn. I can't do that.
Esther, I made
Esther
the motion to adjourn.
Any seconded.
I second it.
Any opposition? If not, thank you all so much. Have a good evening.
Good night.
Night.
Good night.